Good evening, Brian. It's Tuesday. So I wanted to follow up on your previous vlog with a few comments real quick. The brief things before I actually get started. You mentioned referencing a program that Apple put out recently. I'm wondering if you're talking about the Swift Playgrounds. I'm not entirely sure what this is, but I know that it is a thing that Apple released relatively recently, I think with the last updated operating system, where it sort of is a way to help introduce people to programming and help sort of makes the process simpler of learning how to code in Swift, which I believe is the language they use now for programming iOS apps and games. Second, I think it's awesome that you and Knox especially have been getting into programming more and more lately. And so on to the main topic of programming. I definitely know what you mean. Back when I was in middle and high school, all of the students had to use the TI-83 and TI-84 calculators. And there was a relatively large business is probably not the right word because I don't think anyone was selling them, but there was a very lively trade of programs for the TI-83 calculator. I don't know that there was ever official ways to get these programs, but there were somehow kids had programs on their calculators that you could download to someone else's calculator if you plugged in a transfer cable and transferred them. So every once in a while somebody would get a new game and then it would spread throughout the school and everyone played and stuff. So there was a pretty active community around the different programs and things that you could get on your TI-83 calculator. And on top of games, there were also some more useful or academic programs. I remember one specifically that helped you figure out the form and the different variables for a quadratic formula pretty easily without having to do any of the actual math. You just sort of plug things in and it's like, oh, here's the things. And that was useful for assignments and things like that. But especially there were lots and lots of games that people played. And I also got into programming some games on the calculator a good bit. I don't think I ever got into any games that had real graphics because I just never learned how to really do that. But a lot of the text-based, menu-based kind of games, like text-based RPGs or adventure games like that, where you have a menu and you pick an option and then it tells you what's happening and you go on from there. I made a couple of those and it was grueling trying to type out all of the script for the code for that. You know, because those things are really, really long and you've got to set variables and then make their menus match the variables and call back and reference things and all of that. And it was very much fun and I really enjoyed it. But it was definitely a lot of work, but it was just so neat to be able to play games like Pac-Man and Galaga, things that I'm sure were not official ports. Somehow somebody must have written the code and figured out how to, you know, program a Galaga or a Pac-Man game onto the calculator, because I'm fairly certain that the people who own the actual games and the actual copyrights did not have an official port to the calculators for TI-83. So, but there were just so many fun games, and I definitely know the feelings that you're talking about starting to tinker with the code and either writing your own code, or what we often got started with is we would see the game, especially a more simple one like a text-based, menu-based adventure game, and we would open up the code and sort of see how it worked and try and mess with something, and if we changed something and it didn't work, it's like, okay, well, what can we learn about how the code is supposed to work from this mistake? Or if we changed something and it did work, it was a big victory or whatever. And that was really, really fun, and so I definitely understand what you mean about wanting to get more and more into programming lately, and I think that would be a really cool thing for you to do. Whether that ends up being with Swift playgrounds like you were talking about, or using some kind of website like Instructables or Skillshare or Lynda to learn other kinds of programming languages. But I just think that'd be really, really neat. And I'm also super familiar with the feeling you have of, I want something, I need to do this thing, whether it's keeping track of how many rows you do with a certain knit when you're knitting or whatever, but having a need and realizing you don't really have any tools that you can get to that solve that, but you want to make something for it. And that's something that I experience a lot, especially at work, and we might be able to go into that a little bit more in the future, but I'm running out of time on this vlog, so I think that's about it. But that sounds really awesome, Brian, and I would definitely be super excited to see any of the things that you've programmed. So I hope you enjoyed this vlog, and I look forward to seeing your video tomorrow.